Welcome back to episode 6 of the $100 Flip Up Challenge, where we take 100 Australian dollars and we're working our way up towards hopefully getting, via flipping used PC parts, that RTX 4090 gaming PC. Now, in the previous episode, we had 2 PCs that we finished off, and the reason I'm making this video so late as opposed to when we finished those PCs, it actually took a long time to sell. Not so much the RTX 3050 PC, which we actually got asking price for that for 850 Aussie dollars. It actually took a long time to sell the RTX 2080 Ti PC. And in fact, we had to drop that PC from $1,200, which is what I was asking for it, down to $1,000. That's the only offer I got on it. And so I took that. And one thing I did learn from that, which I have known from previous flips, is that RTX 2000 doesn't do that well, especially when you go into the higher end cards like the 2080 or the 2080 Ti in that series of GPUs. So an RTX 3050 getting $850 with a weaker CPU and other specs versus $1,000 for a 2080 Ti. I mean, me personally, I'd rather be buying that 2080 Ti, but the market seems to want RTX 3000 or RTX 4000. So we're gonna be sticking with those GPUs. We've learned our lesson, and now we're starting off today's episode. We have a balance of over 2,000 Australian dollars because we still had some cash left over from the previous episode. And what we're going to do right now is start making some magic happen where the times have shifted. Also, we went from busy season before Christmas to after Christmas being a relatively flat market where I am. And so that just means I've got to get a lot more competitive with just my deals, but also my margins. I'm gonna have to be making less going forward, at least in the next couple of months. But fear not, we will get the job done. So let's get into the first deal that we've picked up here, as well as the first PC that we are going to put together.
Season 3 of the $100 Flip Up Challenge is brought to you by VIP SCD Keys, bringing you that $15 Windows 10 Pro Key license when you use that coupon code BFTYC. Links in description below.
So starting off with our first deal here, this is bringing the absolute fire to deals. And this is a PC that we got here for 300 Australian dollars. Now the person who was selling it, they said there was an i5 in there. And then when I saw the motherboard and the cooler, I thought, well, it has to at least be an i5 12400. It's also got 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. The graphics card was a GT 1030, which is really underpowered. I think it's even the DDR model, not the GDDR5 model, so it's even really slow on that regard. And also the power supply is really lackluster. But it's got an M.2 NVMe drive in the PC, as well as a 2 terabyte hard drive. So what we're gonna do going forward is we're gonna take all the goodness out of this case, because this case really isn't going to sell a PC over $1,000. We need RGB and we need something that looks good. So we're gonna tack this on, which is 60 Aussie dollars for this prime case with 4 RGB fans. And we're also going to use a $10 power supply that we got in a recent parts hunt to add to this PC. As well as making another PC with our remaining budget, we're also gonna use a $10 power supply for that too, as well as a 1 terabyte SSD. And we are going to use our budget and stock up on 3 RTX 3070s, where we're going to be using one in today's build right here, but also we're going to use another 2 of these in other parts that we're lining up. So we're going to get 2 PCs built, as well as have a spare RTX 3070. So let's get our first PC underway and see how it turns out. So we've now finished the RTX 3070 PC, and the great news here is this thing is just booted up the first time, working absolutely flawless, and there's no noises or anything like that, and the temps on the GPU are pretty good. So we're gonna show you now a little magic trick with this PC right here.
Is this your card?
I don't know.
Was it a red card?
I don't know what red is.
Ta-da!
And there's the magic trick in full display. I actually got this sale via off the back of another ad that I had up for sale that I sold the other day, completely separate from this series. And of course, when you've got a sale lined up, especially in these recent times, you always want to take advantage of that. So that is going towards the budget already, but of course, we're going to update when we are ready to go pick up that deal. And we're going to keep this rolling while we've got some hot 3070s. So it's now the next day and we've got a bit of an update which includes good news and more good news, except between those 2 points of good news, there was a bit of a roller coaster ride. We'll talk about the roller coaster when we get down to the studio, but in the back here we've got 2 new cases as well as a new B550 motherboard and 2 32GB kits of memory. And so the reason we got this stuff is that we just need to complete these builds. I want to get them up for sale after that first sale, which has actually given us a bit more budget now. I'm keen to get these builds sold, work our way up to that high-end PC, and I'm hoping to get that done in the next 2 months. But that being said, these 2 cases in the back here, they ran out of the Acer Prime cases that I'm used to using because they got the 4 RGB fans in them. They're usually really good value, but they're out of stock of those. So this was the next best thing. They're micro ATX, which means that they won't fit ATX boards, but they're $68, and the boards that we're gonna be putting, at least in those 2 cases, are micro ATX. So the 2 AM4 boards I have here, one from the store and one from AliExpress, they are going to hopefully work A-OK with no problems, but this is where we're gonna talk about the problems. Let's get this stuff down to the studio. And now we've got all the stuff on the table ready to build out 2 more PCs in this episode. However, this board right here, we got that new. We got the 2 32GB sticks new. We also got this 4750G in a used parts hunt for $100. And that had some bent pins, we bent them back. But then we've got this Ryzen 5 3600 here in this AliExpress board that we got. And the interesting thing about this is that it had broken pins on it. So I got this for $50 off Facebook. I actually been messaging the guy he had it up for $100. I offered him $50 a long time ago and he never accepted. And so then he dropped it down to $60 all these months later. I'm like, I'll come and pick it up for $50. And so he accepted, but he said it had bent pins and not broken pins. And the problem here is that we can see right in this top corner, I've actually put in 2 supplemental pins. And they are AM2 pins. So you can see those AM2 pins right up there. Now it works in this configuration, but it didn't work in the configuration when those 2 pins were missing. So I got lucky in that I got it to work, but it's just sad that the person said in the listing, oh, it's working, it was working, and he didn't mention any broken pins. And so it was just, and then he said, buyer beware, but I mean, buyer beware if you're not lying. So I mean, it was kind of that's the roller coaster I was talking about. Kind of we turned a potential hosing into something that can work. And the problem is though, this CPU is just not gonna leave this motherboard. So that's pretty much the predicament we're in there. But that being said, I'm just gonna test it out, make sure it works 100%. It should, because we're using the AM2 pins. They're a little bit longer, a little bit thicker. They should make actually perfect contact with those pins. Anyhow, let's price these builds up for you guys, and then we will start building them out and seeing what they come out like. So we've now got both these PCs all complete. We've done the photographs. They've come out actually really good. So I'm happy with this deep cool banger case that I got. The build quality is actually pretty solid too. But of course, the most important thing is that RGB is shining through in the photos too. That's always the most important thing with a flip nowadays, is to make sure that RGB bling is shining and it's shining hard. Now, the second PC, the Ryzen 5 3600 PC, I am going to sell that second because I do want to run that through actually quite a lot of stress tests before it goes. I want to make sure that's got zero problems, because that is the first time I have done this sort of fix with the pins. And so I've never done that before. I've always just bent pins back, or if pins have been broken off, the CPU still worked. So this one's actually a first for me. And so, of course, with a PC, you want to make sure it's just 100% stable before you sell it to anyone. And of course, in this case, these are PCs that are going over $1,000, so they're going to actually get, I usually give a 12-month guarantee with these kinds of PCs too. But with that news aside, hopefully we can get both these PCs sold for around 1,100 Aussie dollars each. And if we manage to do that, I will then have enough budget to probably do another hard episode of finding some really good flips, because if I calculate things in my head right, we'll still be shy of a proper budget to do an RTX 4090 PC. And the reason for that is because a 4090 itself, even on the used market, the cheapest I'm seeing them is like $2,500. And I'm not going to be stuffing that in with, say, an i5-12400F, for instance. Yeah, I could do that, but the whole point of the series is to get a high-end gaming PC. So I want to, if I do a 4090, I want to get it in with, say, a 7800 X3D or something like that. So hopefully we get both these PCs sold quick enough, and then we can start the next episode and then work our way up to the finale. But it's coming together, and that first flip at the start of this episode, that came really quick, really fast. So I'm hoping the RTX 3000 series, especially these 3070 Auruses, they do sell really well. One thing, actually, we'll go over now to the seat. We'll talk about this more in depth, about what's going on here, what I'm noticing with the market, and some trends that are taking place here. So in between the last episode and this episode, I did make some other sort of videos on the channel explaining why this episode took so long to make. And that was because of the RTX 2080 Ti PC in particular. The RTX 3050 PC, that sold after a few weeks. But the 2080 Ti system, I was sitting on that for over a month. And even I lowered the price down to $1,000, and it still took another week to sell. And that in itself showed me that I can sell a 3070 PC for like $1,100 day in, day out, and it sells really quickly. But then a 2080 Ti PC, and that had an i7 as well, the $1,100 one had an i5. So what that shows is when the people came and pick it up, they're like, oh wow, 3070, how are you doing this so cheap? And then the person who came and picked up the 2080 Ti PC, they were like, this PC is extremely good value. I know what the 2080 Ti has done. I've done my research, and this PC is actually a bargain. I'm like, yeah, it's actually a really good deal, but I was hoping to get more money. I didn't want to say that to him. I was like, I was hoping to get more money, but I just can't. So what I learned from that was the RTX 2000 series, I'm really going to stick to, if I do pick them up, I'm going to pick them up for less than what the market wants for them right now. So for instance, a 2060 Super, if I can get that for $250 here, I'm just going to leave that and get a 3060 for an extra 50 Aussie dollars, or even an extra $100 would probably be justified, because the 3060, for example, is just going to sell for an extra $100 more on the PC, and it's going to sell a lot faster. And that's what I'm seeing here, is like RTX 3000 or nothing. Or pretty much just go GTX 10 series for really cheap, make cheap budget gaming PCs. I think the RTX 2000 series, I've had a really tough time. Every time I put an RTX 2000 series GPU in a build, it's always had a tough time selling. It's always taken a while to sell that PC, or I've had to lower the price to levels where the profit margins are just way less than, say, an RTX 3000 PC. And so that is sort of one thing I've learned out of this series, with hard, concrete, sort of anecdotal evidence. But maybe if you guys are flipping as well, you can get that out of this episode as well. So I'm definitely going to be lowering my interest in 2000 and sort of switching more to 3000, where hopefully these two 3070 PCs, they do fly out pretty quickly. But also, as we talked about before, currently it is indeed where I am locally a buyer's market. So I've just got to be more competitive on my pricing, and that means less margins. But we're still going to be hopefully flipping at a pretty solid pace from here in, because the deals are getting pretty solid on CPUs and motherboards and things like that. Whether or not the person who sold me that Ryzen 5 3600, for example, knew it was broken, but they said it was working, but then the irony was I did get it working in the end. Doesn't matter. We still got a $50 Ryzen 5 3600. But also at the start of the episode, that i5-12400F system, absolute bargain. So definitely going to be keeping my eyes out, because we still have a healthy budget left over in this episode. So even while I'm selling these PCs, I'm still going to be looking for deals. And I think this is probably the best thing now once we get to this budget, because I only had, coming out of the last episode before I flipped that 3050 and that 2080 Ti PC, I only had 300 Aussie dollars, which really wasn't enough wiggle room to play around and get good deals if they came up, especially on CPU, motherboard, and RAM combos and things like that. And so now that we've got this extra stash here as well, on top of selling these PCs, we just got so much more wiggle room. And I think that in itself, maybe I'll just save that to once we get the series finished. I can do like a whole recap episode on all the feedback for you guys, if you guys are into flipping, and things that I can share with you guys. But the most important one that I'm learning in this series is RTX 2000 series is really not that attractive on the used market, at least where I am locally. But outside of that, we'll talk about a lot of different strategies, hopefully when we get this series wrapped up I'm anticipating 2 more episodes after this episode, and then we can do a full recap as well. Anyhow, guys, with all that aside, do let us know what was your favorite PC and your favorite deal of today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the $100 Flip Up Challenge, where we are finally working our way up from this buyer's market, and we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna get to that high-end PC, where I think coming up to this stage, it was very easy coming up before Christmas, but then after Christmas, I got sort of served a reality check. But it definitely took me by surprise, in that it's not just the worst off season that I've seen coming off after Christmas, but also the economic conditions and everything that I research in that regard is pretty much supporting what I'm seeing locally. So I think, unfortunately for the broader economy, tough times ahead. But of course, at techyescity, when times get tough, I think you know the rest. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.